Hello and welcome to the agenda here on the Blood Red YouTube channel with me, Kai Delaney. I'm joined by Matt Addison, and today we're talking all things Roberto Firmino. Matt, it's not gone quite all Bobby's way this season, has it?
It's not. It's a difficult period for Liverpool, and I don't think it's a coincidence really that it's a difficult period for Roberto Firmino as well. He's not looked particularly confident. We've obviously just seen the Merseyside derby, and without wanting to remind Liverpool fans of that match again, it was another example really where Firmino had a couple of opportunities to let fly and shoot, and maybe took an extra touch, didn't quite look his confident self. And I know we're going to come on to it and we're going to speak in a little bit of detail about why that might be, but I think there's a good few factors to think about. And, I want to make clear to everyone, first and foremost, this isn't us having a go at Roberto Firmino. We both know how brilliant he is and how fantastic he can be for Liverpool. We've seen that, plenty of times over the years for Liverpool that he's been here now. What is it, 5.5, 6 years he's been at Anfield. So we know what he can bring to the table, and that's sort of where the frustrations lie, I think, because he's not, we have to admit, at this moment in time, performing anywhere near that high level that he's set for himself.
Absolutely. He is, he's been an integral part of Klopp's team for the past few years. And I think it's interesting going back into the numbers, actually. If you go back to 17-18, 27 goals that season. 18-19, he goes down to 16 goals, and then 12 goals last season. So far this year, 6 goals in 35 appearances, just 1 in his last 14. It's a worrying pattern, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I mean, you only have to look at the underlying numbers as well. You look at the expected goals last season. I think he was about 4 under where he should have been. So essentially 4 below the number of goals that the average finisher would score. And obviously for a Liverpool number 9, you would imagine that they're at the very least a sort of average player in that regard. And it seems that he's a little bit below that. I think this season he's at around 3 or so below so far. Again, it's on the sort of same rate by the end of the season. It might sort of finish up at the same level if it continues the way that he's going. So yeah, in terms of goals, the positions he's getting himself into, you would expect him to be a little bit more clinical. I mean, that's never been a huge part of his game. It's never been the main reason that he's in this Liverpool team, is to provide those goals. We know that Sadio Mane, maybe not so much this season, but in a normal season will guarantee you goals. Certainly Mohamed Salah is at that level where, even this season he's scoring at a ridiculous rate. He's not too far off in terms of the numbers that he's projected to get for the remainder of this season, to what he got in his first season when he got 44. So he's still performing at that level, and that sort of takes the pressure off, I think, some of the other players. But I think you almost see Firmino getting the goals almost as a bonus, but as long as he's doing the other stuff and he's creating and he's pressing and he's doing all of the other things, I think the issue for me at the moment is that it's kind of a combination of the two. He's not getting as many goals as what he should be. He's not scoring when he gets the opportunities, but he's probably not doing the other side of his game particularly well at this moment either.
Do you think they almost come as a package, though, that you say that the goals, we all know he's not judged on his goals, as you say, that they are a bonus to what he brings to the team. But do you think when maybe some goals are coming and the confidence is there, then the pressing comes with it and then the assists come? Do you think if without some goals to maybe kickstart that, we're kind of losing everything else we get from him as a player as well?
I think so, yeah. I think it's not just him as an individual either. I think, it sort of ties hand in hand with the fact that Liverpool at their best brings Firmino at their best. And it's almost, chicken and egg. Which one comes first? Is it Firmino that drags Liverpool to that level, or is it Liverpool that drags Firmino to that level? I think it's a very difficult question to answer. I do think he's very much a confidence player. He's someone that, will provide those flicks and tricks. We saw it only a couple of weeks ago with the assist from Mohamed Salah, where he just flicks it with his back foot. And there's still sort of glimmers of that happening, but it's not happening in the same regular basis that it has done in previous seasons. So I think confidence is one thing. I think tiredness as well. We're going to come on to it, but the number of games that he's played, I think it's something like 270 games over the past 4 seasons or something like that. It's something crazy in terms of the number of matches and international matches, of course, flying to Brazil to play in those games. It's a combination of so many different things. But yeah, the sort of way to get Firmino back to his best is the more difficult question to answer, because he's not really going to have too many opportunities to rest or to gain his confidence whilst Liverpool are in this sort of form.
There are, of course, mitigating circumstances. This is a season like one we've never seen before. There are other reasons we will come on to. Liverpool haven't scored an open play at Anfield since the game against West Brom on December the 27th. Obviously, no wins in their last 6, lost their last 4. It's not all on Firmino, is it? Let's face it. He's maybe not in his best moment, but there are plenty of others. Certainly, the problems in defence have been well documented, but maybe barring Salah, who is having a fantastic season, that there are problems kind of in general, not just with Firmino in Liverpool's attack.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all part of the same package, isn't it? I think, to be honest, Mohamed Salah is kind of scoring so many goals this season that we've kind of forgotten a little bit that Sadio Mane is having very much a below par season in that regard. So it's on his shoulders as well, I think, to pick up and score a few between now and the end of the season, because I think at the moment he's only scored about 5 or so in the Premier League, which for someone of Sadio Mane's quality, you would expect that figure to be 3-4 times that, really. So yeah, it's a bit of a problem in the sort of whole system, the way that Liverpool play. And look, it's often said that Firmino is Liverpool's system. He is the one that sort of typifies the way that Jurgen Klopp and Pep Blinders and Liverpool like to sort of set up, and sort of he is the creative hub, isn't he? I know, obviously, we've spoken about that being the case. He has to sort of do that alongside scoring the goals at the same time. But I think for me, the issue is that he's creating sort of his best creation statistics and the best, most confident Firmino comes when he's got a bit of space. He's got, runs in behind defences. And I think particularly at Anfield, we've seen that Liverpool just haven't had that luxury over the last few weeks. Teams have almost found the template to stifle them. We saw with Everton, they sort of played a back 4/back 5 and sat in deep and counter-attacked. The only reason they did that is because they've seen, Burnley, Brighton, teams like that, even West Brom to an extent, they've been able to do that and stifle Roberto Firmino. So I think we see a better version of Firmino, for example, against Leipzig, against, maybe West Ham, teams like that did come out and attack Liverpool. And that's what you've got to try and replicate. There's no easy way of going about that, because if, Sheffield United, for example, at the weekend, they're not going to come out and be expansive because they'd be stupid to do so. That would be an easy way for them to sort of kill themselves, really, in terms of giving Liverpool space. So what Liverpool have to do is use the possession and use the skills of Firmino to try and sort of play themselves into form, if you like. They have to try and get a way around these sort of back lines that are just going to sit in, because that isn't going to change. That's the big problem for me, is that we know what Roberto Firmino can do, but he's just not necessarily stylistically best suited to playing in those teams.
It's interesting you mentioned the style there, because it's been maybe mentioned in the past that of all the players in Liverpool's squad, really, he's the one that is irreplaceable in terms of the system, and that the whole attack is almost built around him. He brings the best out of Salah and Mane, and I think they would probably agree they wouldn't score the goals they do if they were playing with an Erling Haaland or a central striker or a number 9, conventional number 9 through the middle. So it's almost worked against him that he's so undroppable in terms of the system and the way Liverpool play for Klopp, that he hasn't missed a Premier League or a Champions League game all season. He's only been rested in the domestic cups. He's undroppable for Klopp in terms of the system. So when is he going to get a break and maybe that bit of recovery he needs?
I don't think it's necessarily the system. I think it's more the injury to Diogo Jota. I mean, I think you can sort of have that similar system with that false number 9 and use Jota in that position, or you can maybe have Jota on the left and maybe play Sadio Mane through the middle and change things around. I think what's really, really hampered Liverpool and Firmino this season is that, as you say, he's had to play every single game. I mean, since Diogo Jota got injured on December the 9th, Liverpool have played 17 games. Roberto Firmino has played in every single one of them. 14 of those have been starts, where he's pretty much played the entire 90 minutes in all of them. He even came on against Aston Villa's youth team in the FA Cup. That was a game that you thought was ideal, really, to not have to play him. But he still played in that fixture, still had, I think, 29, 30 minutes on the pitch in that game. So he's having to play every game at the moment. Diogo Jota, we think, is going to be back in training on Wednesday for Liverpool. Hopefully, if things go well, maybe we might see him. If not against Sheffield United, then probably against Chelsea the week after. I think for me, that is the closest thing to a solution that you can see to this. I think it's sort of twofold. I think you can have him in a front four. I think Jota being in the team with Firmino will help Firmino because it sort of takes the emphasis off him to be the creative spark. It's somebody else who's coming into the team to be able to help him do that job. But equally, you could go with a 3 and you could just give Roberto Firmino the odd game, here and there out of the team. And I think, he's proven himself off the bench a couple of times this season. He's done okay in that regard. I think it just will help him freshen up because we know what his best skill really for me is that defensive ability, the ability to chase and harry and run. And maybe that's not been the case because other teams have just given Liverpool possession and that's been the template. But I think it's also because he's just looked a little bit tired, a little bit jaded. And if you can get a bit more energy back into Firmino, he, as you say, can bring the best out of the players around him. I think the key to getting Sadio Mane's goals up is probably the same sort of thing as getting Firmino back to his level because, if you've got a more energetic, a more high-pressing Firmino, it gives Liverpool the ball higher up the pitch and it just gives them a lot more opportunities to score, which I think certainly creatively, it's often said that Firmino is Liverpool's best playmaker, not just on the ball, but off the ball as well. And I think that can really sort of help them moving forward.
It's been a difficult season, obviously, struggling in the league, and it looks like a real battle for the top 4 places now, kind of all eggs in the Champions League basket, I guess, if we can get through the second tie against Leipzig. There's been talk that Liverpool need to evolve and Klopp needs to almost start building his second team now. That front 3 could be broken up, and Jota's signing looked like it. That's maybe the start of that earlier on this season. You'd have to say you wouldn't expect Salah to leave. You wouldn't expect Mane to leave. I mean, you might not even expect Firmino to leave. This isn't a podcast where we're going to say, sell Firmino, he's finished. His Liverpool days are done, far from it. But is there possibly that start of evolution next season? What do you see his role becoming for Klopp in the new season?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, that I agree. I absolutely wouldn't be looking to sell any of the front 3. I think even if Liverpool were looking to sell them, I don't think they could get the money for them this summer anyway. I think there's, certainly Barcelona with financial issues, they are not going to be able to sign big players. I think if Real Madrid do go and do find that they have the money to do it, they'll probably go for someone like Kylian Mbappe instead. So I think for Liverpool, it's not a case of having or even wanting to move one of these players on. It's a case of adding to it for me. I think this season we've seen the benefit of adding Diogo Jota. We've seen, in the sort of first couple of months that he was fit for Liverpool, having that extra player in there, as I say, it helps Firmino, it helps the other players. You can sort of rotate them, you can add them in. The issue that Liverpool have had this season is that Diogo Jota has come in, done really well, but then got injured. So for me, it's a case of almost replicating the Jota transfer. I think if you've got the usual front 3, plus you've got Jota there to rotate, plus you've got maybe one more, and then you've got Harvey Elliott, I think that's a sort of 6-man team in terms of the attacking positions, which gives you the opportunity, even if someone's injured, you've got somebody to come off the bench. Even if you want to go with a front 4, you've not used all 4 of your options, you've still got 1 or 2 more to come off the bench. It's a case of adding to that, really. And I think that will only become more important. I pretty much expect Divock Origi will move on in the summer. I think there's a really, really good chance that Xherdan Shaqiri moves on as well. When you think that Liverpool set a price tag for him and would have let him go last season, I think that probably will happen now this summer. And then you've got Takumi Minamino as well, who didn't really get an opportunity for Liverpool. I think the most likely scenario at this stage is that maybe he gets a couple of goals for Southampton, the price tag goes up and Liverpool make a profit on him in the summer potentially. So I think there's a few different questions to be asked, but for me, it's not a case of moving on any of the existing front 3. It's a case of adding to that. And for me, Firmino's role doesn't really change in terms of what the plan was for his role this season. It was essentially, we're still going to use him, we're still going to have him in the team, but it's going to be a case of maybe giving him a rest here and there, using him off the bench more than maybe has been the case in the past, and just having that opportunity to freshen things up. I think it's sort of caught up with him all of this football. I think we see a much better version of Roberto Firmino over the last few weeks if Diogo Jota is there. So, yeah, I don't know quite how Liverpool will replicate that Diogo Jota transfer deal. It was obviously a superb signing, even at 41 million. But if they can find another version of him, whoever that might be, I think essentially Roberto Firmino's role last summer to this summer probably won't change a great deal.
And just quickly, before we get off, we do have the Analyze Anfield podcast coming up in a moment. But there's been an interesting theory doing the rounds on Twitter in the last day or two. The idea that Firmino could perhaps play the deeper role. We know he certainly can do it as a kind of a false 9 or even a 10. But what about the idea of him maybe playing as one of the 2 8s in the Klopp team?
The more I've thought about this, and it was only suggested to me a few minutes before we did the podcast, but the more I think about it, the more I think actually this could really work. I think it's certainly something that I'd like to explore with Liverpool. You think, the big part of the number 8 is to be creative. When Naby Keita came in, it was kind of the idea was to have somebody who could do the defensive work, who could press, who could sort of get up and down the pitch, be box to box, but also create and maybe have that final pass in his locker. I think essentially what you are describing there is Roberto Firmino. I don't think he's ever played there before, but I do think he possibly could have the attributes to make that work. I think it would be, a really interesting thing to sort of try out. But I think, again, it's probably more the case that you would see a front four and sort of Firmino as the deepest of those. So as the number 10, saying a 4-2-3-1, I think that's probably the closest we'd get to seeing him as a number 8. But, who knows, maybe in pre-season, that's something to think about and try, because it's not something I'd ever considered before. Probably if you'd have asked me this yesterday, I'd probably laughed. But the more I think about it, the more there is a case, I think, for that making a little bit of sense.
Absolutely. Well, Roberto Firmino is certainly going to have an important role to play for Jurgen Klopp this season as his Liverpool side chase Champions League qualification. I've been Kai Delaney, joined by Matt Addison here on Blood Red. Thanks for listening to The Agenda, and until next time, it's bye for now.